We have one item today, so let's go to item 3A, please.
Presentation by the Arizona Department of Health Sober Living and discussion regarding city land development code regulations.
All right, so I think we have Megan Whitby, is that right, on the line here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Set it up, Mayor.
Oh, sure. Mr. Tyler Goodman's going to do a little intro first.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Megan Whitby's on the phone with us today from Department of Health Services. She's the Bureau Chief of Specialty Licensing. We requested that she speak to us today just in regards to the process the state took over regulation and the application process, the enforcement process for sober living homes. So we wanted to just get her on the line to have a touch point so that we could understand the process from their angle, as well as anything that we can do, if we can do anything from the city, and have some questions and answers. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Tyler. So, Megan, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I was not able to be there in person, but with the current health issues going on right now, we're all kind of pulling double and triple duty sometimes at the department here. So, as far as sober living homes go, it's part of special licensing. Our bureau is responsible for licensing several different things, including medical marijuana dispensaries. We also license group homes for the developmentally disabled, as well as several individual license types, such as medical radiologic technologists, speech and hearing professionals, dispensary agents who work in the medical marijuana dispensaries, and direct entry midwives as well. So with all of that, one of the benefits to special licensing and the fact that we have so many different license types is that we've really developed kind of a flexible team. So we're able to use our resources and shift them as need be when certain situations are going on with our different license types. So we always have flexibility to add more staff in certain areas and have people help out. As far as licensing of sober living homes, as you all know, the department's rules went into effect last summer, and the homes had until September to submit an application to the department. They kind of had a little bit of a leeway there, time to get their applications in. So we were trying to get people in compliance that way. So we were waiting for applications to come in. We were providing education about what the licensing process was. We did receive quite a few applications. We also received quite a few incomplete applications. So as time went on and we began seeing some of the applications were never completed and homes did not get licensed, then we started moving more into our enforcement function as the department. So what that means is now we are focusing on unlicensed sober living homes, as well as our licensed homes as well, of course, making sure everyone's in compliance. But any complaints that we get of someone who suspects that a sober living home is operating unlicensed are being investigated. Anyone who has turned in an application and didn't actually see it the whole way through to become licensed, we have submitted complaints ourselves on those and are doing complaint investigations on those. Any list of homes that the cities or local jurisdictions have given us of homes that they know to be or believe to be licensed as, or should be licensed as sober living homes, we are investigating those as well. So what that looks like is we have a process in place where we send a letter letting them know that we have a complaint and we have information that leads us to believe they are operating unlicensed, informing them of what the requirements are, that if you meet this definition as per statute, that you do need to go ahead and become licensed with us. Then we do send someone out to do an investigation, one of our surveyors. And again, there's a series of letters, there's some back and forth, but at the end of the day, if we can't get them to come into compliance and apply for a license and follow through with that application, we have been issuing cease and desist orders that also have civil money penalties attached to them, and per statute, we can assess $1,000 a day for any home operating unlicensed as a sober living home. So we are in all of that process right now. Of course, it doesn't happen overnight, and we have to thoroughly investigate each one of these homes. I know you had some questions about our staffing. So it's in its own little program. It's sober living and our group homes for the developmentally disabled. We have 3 dedicated surveyors to sober living homes and a team lead that oversees those 2 groups. But as I said, we have some other staff flexibility where anytime we need additional people, we do have them jump in and help out as well. I don't know if you have any more questions for me. We've also been, aside from the homes that have come to us, or complaints that have come to us, we are actively seeking out information from local jurisdictions. So, again, as the department, we license many different types of facilities and homes and things of the nature. So we do have contacts with a lot of the local jurisdictions in the zoning department. So we have been actively reaching out to cities and towns to find out if they know of homes that they believe to be sober living homes, and comparing them with the ones we have licensed and making sure they're not licensed as a different type of facility, because sometimes somebody may think someone's operating a sober living home and they're actually licensed as a different type of facility. So we're trying to do all of our due diligence there, and then also going out and investigating. And like I said, we are pursuing cease and desist orders and civil money penalties against those that we do find to be operating without a license.
All right. I guess we'll go to questions, comments from the council. Councilman Good.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is City Councilman Phil Good. Under the previous mayor, I was the co-chairman of the Structured Sober Living Homes Committee, and also worked extensively with Representative Noel Campbell when we had the permissive ordinance passed that allowed us to do some local regulation that was pretty effective in reducing the number of unlicensed homes that were really taking advantage of a lot of these protected class of residents. So I was also on the Stakeholders Committee when we met with the Department of Health Services to draft the final rules over the course of about 6 or 7 months, starting in late 2018, and then we finally had the final rules approved in May of 19, and we've been kind of trying to monitor how the licensing process is going forward. One of our initial concerns was how many sober living homes throughout the state had been properly licensed, and whether there would be sufficient inspectors to be able to respond to either local concerns by the municipality or by local residents. So do I understand you correctly by saying that there are a total of 3 surveyors for the entire state?
So there are 3 dedicated surveyors at this time for the sober living program. I can tell you we have just over 100 actual licensees right now. And if you compare that to caseloads in other areas in licensing, it's typically around 100 per surveyor. So right now our caseload is significantly less than it is in other licensing areas. And as the program grows and develops, of course, the department will continually look at that and what the needs are of the program. But as I said, being in special licensing, we have the benefit of having people in flexible positions where they can go and help other programs within our bureau as needed.
So the 3 are actually dedicated to this particular statute, and then you have others that can help out if you're maybe have too many complaints to deal with at a particular time?
Yes, that is true.
So am I correct in saying you have 100 licensed sober homes throughout the state?
I don't know know the exact number. I know it is over 100, but it's not significantly over 100 at this time.
Well, I know we have, according to the last list that we got, we have 28 here in Prescott alone, so that's almost 30% of your whole state licensees.
Yes, Prescott as well as Phoenix are primarily where most of our licensees are at this point.
Yeah, one of the confusing processes is our understanding of how an applicant applies for licensing, and they are expected to be able to contact the local municipality to make sure that they are in compliance with zoning and ordinances before they apply to the state. Is that correct?
They do have to attest in their application that they are in compliance with local zoning.
And how do you verify that they actually have, other than their attestment?
Well, so this is a standard practice in licensing for various reasons, including that depending on the license type, some cities and towns do not provide a zoning document, and so for our purposes, for rules, we have to make rules that applicants can comply with. So what happens is if somebody attests on their application that they are in compliance with local zoning, and then we are to receive information, a complaint or something else later, that we can substantiate that they falsely attested that on their attestation, then they have lied on their application, and we can take enforcement action on that license up to and including revocation.
Yeah, that's a bit of a gap right now, because usually our local residents who have some concern about a potential sober home that has started operation will usually contact someone on the council or even directly into our community development department to ask whether this is a legitimate home. But we then, speaking individually, I've been contacted probably by, at least 4 different residents who weren't sure whether such a home was operating and operating legally. But from our understanding of the statute, I individually cannot ask that question, and I have to transfer it over to either our code enforcement officer or our department that handles zoning to find out whether such a home has actually gone through the process and is operating legally. So there seems to be a little bit of a gap there when a resident says, I've got a problem in my neighborhood, is it okay or not? And I have to answer, I can't answer that question. You'll have to maybe contact Department of Health Services directly. And at this point, we only get quarterly reports of actually licensed operating homes. So technically, if you just do the math, someone could operate for maybe 3 months or more before we would even have a report knowing if they were properly licensed, unless there was an individual complaint. Do I understand that correctly?
So if somebody believes something, that a home is operating possibly illegally, we would encourage them always to go directly to our website and submit a complaint, because we do have that information available to us where we can go ahead and look at it. We are prohibited by the statute from putting addresses, for releasing the addresses of the sober living homes, as they are confidential, and that's something that would take a legislative change, something that the department can change.
So what is your standard for responding to a concern of an individual? How quickly can they find out if it's licensed or unlicensed?
Well, again, some of that comes down to, there is that confidentiality, so we can't, if they're specifically asking whether or not a home is licensed, it depends on the specifics. I can't tell you that we can always tell somebody that, yes, this is a licensed home, because we're bound by statute not to release that information. It's something very similar that we have with dispensaries. When we have dispensary complaints, a lot of that information is covered under a confidentiality statute that's much broader than the sober living one, and we're not allowed to release a lot of information to complainants. So it's not necessarily that we're going to be able to tell them everything's good and this is resolved. It's a matter that the department then has that information and can take action if somebody is operating illegally, or if it is a licensee and something is out of compliance, then we can take action on their license.
So that can be a very long period of time. We had a particular incident that occurred back in February where we had a unlicensed facility that was purporting to be a treatment center, and it turned out that our local investigative team that handles complaints of drug use and sales, the PANT group, actually was able to determine that this facility was allegedly selling drugs, and we had no knowledge of it, and it had been going on for quite some time. So by not being able to at least respond to a local complaint by saying either this is or isn't properly licensed, it opens the door for some real dangerous criminal activity.
And I can't disagree with you. Again, the statute that we did not create the statute. It is what it is at this time, and we enforce it as it is. But legislative changes could happen in the future. I don't know.
Are you finding that the licensing fees and the penalties that you've been able to acquire are sufficient to fund the entire program as it was initially expected?
We believe we did an economic impact statement, and we believe the fees are justified and reasonable as they are. As with any program, as time goes on, we always continue to look at that. When we are up, say, for our 5-year review for our rules, we look at all aspects of the program, including whether or not the current fees are sufficient for the program.
Well, I noticed that the statute does allow law enforcement to be aware of potential locations. And since local ordinances are considered law at the local level, our code enforcement officers technically are law enforcement officers, so they should have the ability to be able to know where these addresses are. Is that correct?
I believe we'd have to probably get our legal counsel to chime in on that.
I think that's important to know, and I would like to get an answer to that, please.
I don't have the Assistant Attorney General with me today, as I was not told that their presence would be required, so but I can definitely reach out to them.
When can we expect an answer?
I will get back with you as soon as I can. They are, as I said, not only our office, but many of the state agencies have been very busy with the current pandemic. So we are, I will get an answer to you as soon as I can.
Okay, a month?
You could send that to me so that I know exactly who you're speaking about and what role they have. Then I can get that to the Attorney General's office and get an answer probably quicker. So if you could tell me exactly what their role is and why you believe they should be able to get that information for the statute, then we can probably get an answer faster than possibly having some back and forth.
Well, as I said, our community has had a long amount of experience with sober homes that were not making sure that the safety of our local residents in this protected class were being properly monitored. And I think there's a really significant gap here that should be able to be managed administratively without having to take this to the legislature to fix these gaps in this ability to provide prompt information to our local community. That's all I have. Thank you.
Again, if you can send me what exactly you're requesting in an email, I will absolutely get you that answer.
Mayor, Megan, this is John Palladini, City Attorney. So just to clarify, the statute allows or provides for disclosure of addresses not just to law enforcement, but to the city's, in our case, it's our community development department, but the zoning departments. And so code enforcement primarily enforces zoning code issues, and so they generally fall under that department. So our position is that the community development or zoning department of a city is also allowed to get that information of the addresses, and that can be shared within the department to essentially on a need-to-know basis. So if a code enforcement person is enforcing zoning code issues, then our position would be that our zoning department or our community development department has the information and shares it with a code enforcement person who's enforcing zoning code. That would be an appropriate disclosure of that information. But again, we sort of treat it on a need to, even though the department can get it, the individuals in the department get it on a need-to-know basis, and it's not just a public or accessible document just because the department can get it. Is that pretty consistent with your understanding?
I think so. I think if you could put together like just a request for us, like who you want the information to go to, and I think
Sure.
That's something that can definitely be done outside of this call. I think if you could, somebody can reach out to us and make that request of having that documentation, we can absolutely probably work out some kind of process.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, probably Mr. Palladini will be reaching out in that regard to make sure you get the request. Yeah, Councilman Siska? Oh,
Did Councilmember Rusing had her hand up?
Councilmember Rusing, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Megan. This is Kathy Rusing, council member. I want to thank you for administering this program. I just want to make a comment that I feel that the purpose of this licensing is to improve the standard of care for a vulnerable population. We also have many assisted living facilities caring for our elderly and disabled people here, and the state licenses and regulates them, and I feel that this is a similar situation that was desperately needed to protect a very vulnerable population that we have up here. So thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you. We appreciate that, and we are doing our very best, and we'll always continue to try to continue learning and improving as we go.
Councilman Siska?
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Megan. Hey, when you mentioned that some of these applications were incomplete, did you were you inferring that they were trying to be misleading, or that they just were incomplete?
No, so all licensing that we do falls under, so aside from the sober living statutes and rules, we have to comply with Title 41 that discusses how all licensing has to be done. It talks about how timeframes, application processing, inspections, all of those things, and the due process rights that applicants and licensees have in certain scenarios. So as far as Title 41 goes, whenever we receive an application, we do what's called an administrative review. So that's a first round look at the paperwork. And then we do, once that's all complete and we have everything that we need, then we do a substantive review to see, does everything actually meet our requirements? We had a lot of applications where no fee was ever submitted. We also had applications that they didn't submit the complete fee. The primary reason that applications were withdrawn, if they were never completed, or denied because they weren't substantively complete, was fee issues. And I can tell you right now, we are I can't say any more than this, just that we are under litigation right now due to that. So, but we are continuing to move forward with the program, and we are continuing to take action on those who are operating unlicensed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Roosing.
This is Councilmember Roosing again, Megan. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you, what is that website if people want to make a complaint or a comment or contact you?
Sure, it is AZDHS.gov. A lot of people are going there these days. We have the data dashboard right on the front page for all of the COVID-19 items. But for our information, you can go to, it's after AZDHS.gov, you do a /licensing/special. Then it'll bring you to the special licensing homepage, and there is a box on there for sober living homes. From there, you can find all the applicant info, provider info, consumer info, including how to make a complaint.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Other questions, comments from the council? Councilwoman Scholl, do you have questions or comments for Megan?
No, I don't, Mayor.
John, anything else? Tyler? Well, Megan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Appreciate all you're doing there, particularly right now during the pandemic. I'm sure you guys are extremely busy. So thanks again for your time today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
All right. That's all we have on the agenda today. This meeting is adjourned.